Welcome to our Friday edition of Military Trailblazer Office Hours. This is our open Q&A session where our goal is to be a forum for people learning Salesforce to ask questions and get help, whether it's a trailhead badge you're stuck on, an issue or challenge that you're facing at work, whatever it is. If it's a Salesforce technology related question, it's fair game. So just all that we ask is that you use the raise hand icon. We'll go through things kind of in order as they come up, and we'll see what we can do to help you out. The only thing that I ask is a couple of things. One, if your question is specifically related to a Salesforce super badge, we try to avoid those because there is a Salesforce policy around credentialing, and super badges are part of that credentialing policy. So, you got to do it on your own, no cheating, that whole thing. So let's avoid those questions if we can. And then the second thing is we have a lot of folks on the call that might want to get to questions. So if we do have a lot of raised hands, we might rush through. Maybe we can't build out every solution on this call, but we'll do our best to do that. But yeah, if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand, ask your question, and we'll do our best to get to it. All right. So I do see a few hands raised. I also, in looking at my Slack channel, I saw the most amazing formula pasted in there that had like a really cool waterfall design. So I want to talk about that in a moment as well.
Thank you, Jack.
Before, yeah, that was slick when I saw that. All right, but before we jump into that, let's maybe go to Forrest, who had a hand up. Forrest, do you have a question or a topic you wanted to go through? I think you're on mute right now.
Sorry about that. Let me
Yeah,
guys
no
send
worries.
you a link that I used to use before to find the different API versions of certain features within
Ooh.
Salesforce. And I noticed that when I logged in and I actually went to do a query, a filter for different dates, it doesn't work anymore. So what I did was I opened a Salesforce case, and they said that has been deprecated, and to use event monitoring.
Huh.
But event monitoring, to the best of my understanding, is a paid service, right?
I, Forrest, I literally just saw this morning. I never knew
Ah,
this was a thing, but when I looked
yeah.
at the release notes for Winter 25 or whatever it is that we're on right now,
Uh-huh.
one of the items in there is that there is now a free tier of event monitoring. I just
Oh,
saw that in the release notes. Yeah, I'll try to grab that here. I'll put it in the chat as well.
aha. I knew you guys were looking at it.
Um, yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
probably should have been looking at this a while back, but yeah, just
yeah. I'm sorry to be dressed like a caveman this morning. I stayed up late last night,
yeah, no worries.
struggling on a flow.
Yeah, as long as all the appropriate parts are covered, you can wear whatever you like to this call. No worries.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
All
so it's
right.
under. I saw this. It was under, I think, development, and then something. Yeah, so I'll try to dig this up where I was looking at it, and I'll share it with you.
Ah, great. Yeah, because I was talking to the Salesforce tech rep if there's anything that was complimentary to use for free, but I guess he didn't know. So yeah, that'd be great if you could send me the
Okay.
link.
Yeah. No, the trick is going to be finding where I was reading this.
Ah, okay.
Okay, yeah, here it is. So this was under the Apex section, but yeah, track Apex unexpected exceptions with free tier event monitoring. Um,
Okay.
so I will throw this into the chat, and hopefully that'll help. Now the date
Okay.
thing as to why something would work and then stop working, um, that might be also something to look at under that, like under in the release notes for a lot of the releases under Apex or under the various things. They might have a section there like new and changed things. And again, one of the things I was looking at today, usually when they deprecate something, I'm very used to them deprecating it where, okay, if your Apex class, for example, is an API version 50, the thing will work. But because they made a change in API 51, if you updated your class, you might have to change your code, based on API 51. But I did see at least one thing today that it's going to apply everywhere. I think it had to do with um, parsing error messages because they were changing some of the text or the way that the error messages were being returned to Apex. So API 50, 61 doesn't matter. It's going to be the same change across all the API versions. I was very surprised about that. But
Yeah.
yeah, it might be something like that where they just deprecated something or changed something. And
Hmm.
yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
All right. Thank you. That's all I have. Mhm.
All right. Any questions on that or any other thoughts there? I did paste that link into the chat, so that'll get you to that one specific thing, but it's also the release notes in general. If anybody hasn't looked at the new release notes.
That's
All
all I
right.
have. Mhm.
Cool. All right. Angie, what do you got besides the most elaborate formula that I've seen in a long time?
So yes, that was thanks to Chat GPT. Love it. Although it ended up being 9,000 characters and I can't use it. Um, yeah. So a few of you have been chiming in on my problem on Slack, so thank you for that. And Ryan, I'm super excited to hear what you have. I can go through it sort of like from start to finish right now. If I can share my screen.
Yeah, sure. Let's hear it.
Okay.
And
So
just as a quick side note, I know Ryan is a very smart dude, and I know he's like he puts together all these great things. But when I saw he's like, yeah, I have a solution, and then like a couple posts later, he's like, yeah, I have like 7 solutions available. I was like, yeah, overachiever. Like, what's going on here?
I know. And then he thanked me for the opportunity. I'm like, for real? Man,
That's
I mean, like I
fun
want
for
Ryan
me.
in my office with me because all day I come up with this stuff and I'm like, oh, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I can see your
So,
screen now.
right. So this is an expo. So it's a trade show. If you're not familiar with trade shows, you can think about a car show or a boat show. Most people understand those. This is in the B2B space. So the client is a trade show about amusement parks, which is kind of fun. And this is an actual real life scenario. It's not made up. So when an exhibitor is assigned to a booth space, they can log into a website and choose what their company does so that they can be found by different buyers or attendees that are going to the show. So they get
Yeah.
to choose from this exhaustive list of product categories, which is kind of stupid in my opinion, because nobody ever is going to really get into this. It's needs to be way smaller. Apparently, it's not allowed to be pared down based on internal politics. So,
Yeah.
what we were going to try to do is bring this information into Salesforce on the
Mhm.
opportunity for the exhibitor for this event, and then try to map it to what I'm calling super categories, which is this sheet here. So, this is that list as how it comes into Salesforce. If it was in the master of admission and financial equipment, it comes into aerial shows. And we just want to map all of these to one category called admission and financial equipment.
Yeah.
So in Salesforce, this is how it comes through. This is that the integration, that other system I was just showing pushes it into the opportunity in just a long text field. So
Yeah.
I've tried to do that form like a formula field saying if product categories contains this, or this, set this field to this, but it didn't like it because it was too long. I tried to break it into two, and then I got the error message that it can't use this field. Then I tried to create a flow with a formula as a resource to try to do this, but again, I ran into the character limit.
Yeah.
And I just kept hitting roadblocks. So take it away, Ryan. No, I did
Oh,
build.
okay, I'm off mute. Like I dropped in the chat here, long term, probably like the other two guys who are chiming in wanting to help out there, I'd probably suggest not using multi-select pick lists and to create either an object that you can have look up to here, and then you can show all these things on a related list, or even potentially two objects, so that say you have these super categories or categories, you could have them captured in an object that lists them and their features and details about them, and then make a junction object that ties between those on all your different trade shows. That way, if you ever need to update your super categories, whatever, you're just doing it right there in your object. And then it'll be a lot better for reporting.
Yeah. Yeah. The
I took
report.
this on and thanked you for the challenge because it was oh yeah, you'll probably need Apex for that. And I think I can do that, and Flow kicked in. So that's
Yeah. I gotta start studying Apex because it just scares me. But
Well, let me ask you a question, Ryan, before you go through how you actually solve this. Looking at the product categories, I think it was mentioned in the Slack that we have no way to influence the integration. So we're not changing values, we're not cleaning things up. So the data is coming in as it's coming in.
Mhm.
What is the delimiter for this? If I'm looking at this, is it the commas?
No, it is, yes, it is the commas. You're right. Yes.
Yeah, it's the commas.
Okay.
It looks like the first part, then your colon, then your commas, but even that first part doesn't always match the MSP exactly. So
Okay.
my approach, Angie, was to take based on that formula that you had posted, and I picked out like 20 something different categories that were in there. And um, I saw that here, let me go ahead and pull up my screen and
Okay.
share screen. I gotta
Well,
wait until yours.
There you
Okay,
go.
there we go. Share screen. Where is it? Screen 3. Oh, okay. Share. So just jump into the custom metadata type thing here real quick, just so you can see the categories. But so these were things that I pulled out of your, well, here, we can honestly, here's the thing.
Yeah.
So I just kind of went through here and I saw, okay, you're looking at if it contains admission, financial equipment, then that's your answer. So what I did was I took all your different things that it could contain, paired with what you wanted as a result. Like here, if it contained any one of these 5, it results in food and beverage equipment. And I put those into custom metadata types. You can see if these are the things that were like in if your contains are here on the left, that's the label. And then the MSP value, the multi-select pick list value, I made a field for that, and that's on the right. So
Yeah. Ryan, real quick, if I could pause you. If somebody had no idea what a custom metadata type was, how would you explain what that is?
totally was planning to go there, and thanks, Bill. I just wanted to just get Angie a visualization of what I was doing here, but
Yep.
good call. That's where we should start. So what a custom metadata type is, if you go over here to your settings, is basically you're creating like a kind of record that you can use that's actually metadata, which is the data about data. You can deploy it up to between your orgs, and you can reference it in validation rules. You can reference it in flows. And so basically you're creating a set of mini records off here to the side that it would take a sysadmin to update.
In other words, when I look at this and you have integration value, that's your record type. That would essentially be the equivalent of like a custom object that you have here.
Yes. And in fact, it's going to show up as an object on your, say, permission sets.
Gotcha. And then if you were to click
So-
into that, not the manage records, but if you actually click into the label of the thing, essentially you can create some types of fields on here as well.
Yeah. So
And
when
we
I
can see your two
created
custom fields.
all these fields except for well, all these fields just came up standard automatically.
Yeah.
So you see they're created by. I initially created 2 fields. I created an integration value field and a MSP value, but then I thought about it. Then I still got to come up with a name for these things. Why not just use that integration value as the name? So I deleted it. You can see it kind of hangs out here and tells you that it's a deleted field. So
one thing I'll just throw out there, I think that makes sense. The only time I've had to come back here and not use that, I think there was limitations around the number of characters. I think like
there's
name
only
field
40
on these
characters in a name field. Yeah, you're
yeah.
right.
So
yeah,
if
this
that was a
definitely.
limitation, that might be a reason not to use that. But yep, makes sense.
Yeah, you can see here 40 because actually when I first made the fields, I went with 128. But then I looked at the value she was using, and 40 seemed like it'd be okay. But you're right. So there's considerations if you are going to implement it in this way, Angie. These are all things that you're going to want to take into consideration. But the thought was, this gives me 2 things to match. It gives me the label, which is all your things that are basically here in your contains, all the things you're trying to match on. And then the MSP value, well, what that would be. So all I was trying to do was build a map, essentially. So there's a one-to-one map there. If it's anything so I just use these 2 fields. So each of these is essentially a little record with the label is what's on your contains, and then the value in the MSP field multi-select pick list field is there. That way we can use it in a flow and we can create a collection, and then we can create a loop, and we can loop through and start acting on your data.
Okay. So Ryan, if I use this, I think you probably saw that my integration values would actually be 142 of them, right? So it would be like I was using contains, so I had already consolidated several values.
Sure. The ones that you consolidated were the only ones you'd really need to build for this. If all you're trying to do is populate those particular 36 super categories, you don't need all of them. You need those ones that you already kind of shortened it down to. Hey, it contains this, it contains that. That's all you need to put in here if that's all you're doing. If you're later wanting to report deeper into all the other stuff and not just the super categories, but go deeper into your other categories, then for this kind of a solution, you may want to do more. But right now, all this solution's doing is trying to identify the MSP value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you've already done a shortcut. So you don't need the 142. You just need the ones that you've already shortened it down to when you were preparing when you're trying to build your formula.
Okay.
So you've already shortcutted it. All we're going to do, and we'll get into it, I just kind of wanted to give you the structure here, and see what they look like. When you hit manage values, and then you can see basically these were all records that were created. We could hit new and we could create more. Because I saw one of the things in your, I think there's like a devices and something that I don't have in here. I only had the ones that I could definitely pull out from your sample on the right, but there's some that aren't in here yet. If you have one you wanted to add, if you see one that's missing, there's one, I want to say it's displays and something or devices and something. We could just hit new and we would add it right here. You would just give it the label and give it the MSP value, which, as you can see, several of these, the label is the MSP value, like clothing. But alcohol, you're searching for things with alcohol and you're making that be beverage alcohol. Mm-hmm. Then here is like what I pulled out of one of your contains. If it's any of these things, it's food and beverage equipment. Vending machine, it's food and beverage equipment. So I just needed that. That's my map.
Yeah.
So now that we have this, we've done this legwork. Now we go to the fun part and we go to the flow. Let's see. That's not the one. So here's the entire record triggered flow. You may want error handling is up to you, but here's the entire record triggered flow. So what you would do, the first thing is you're gonna what are we triggering on? Yeah, okay, reload. It's been open too long. You know how flow. So I made some guesses and some assumptions. And if I were to write up a long response to you or do it in a video, I'd list out my assumptions so we can do them here. But our assumptions were that you're wanting this to run, and maybe they come in with this on creation. I didn't know. So I did created or updated because I didn't know your system. If you're doing created or updated, you need two things here. If you're just doing updated, you only need this first one.
You only need updated. Okay.
The way to make it be created or updated and also test, I did, if there's no ID, then I know it's new. But so you only need this first part, and you can do record is updated. So then if the product categories have changed, we're going to launch this. We're going to go get our custom metadata so we have them to work with. So now we have a collection. And all we did was we got them all, because that's all integration values used for is this. I went ahead and sorted them and said, you don't even need to do that. I got all the records. Then we're going to loop through them. And that's all we're looping through. We're looping through the get from there. And then we're going to do a check. And our check is, I cleaned this up some shortly before this to take care of the ampersands. But in the original version, where we're not worried about the ampersands, what the resource here is, in fact, it might be easier to see it in the original version, and then we can go into the ampersand cleanup if you want.
Well, maybe for time's sake, so if anybody else has questions, we can just kind of talk through what the flow does.
Okay. And then... All right. Let's go back to it then. Record type. Okay. Um, good call. We're on a meeting here where people have different questions they want to answer. I didn't see any other hands up though, so we may want to give people a chance. I can,
No,
but
you're
anyway,
good.
so we go through our custom metadata types.
It's beautiful.
We're checking. Let me skip by the form. Just picture originally what I did for this field was we're literally looking at that field on the triggering record, right? So if your product categories field on your triggering record contains, and then the label, the current label. So one at a time, it's going to go through all those and see, does it contain that label? So that simulates your contains that you're trying to do with Chat GPT's nonsense. And that, sorry, not Chat GPT thinks it can do formulas. It can't, unless there's already been a good formula for it to steal from. If there were just bad formulas, it just makes bad formulas. Anyway, then cool. I added this second line so that if it's already in there, because you have sometimes multiple, we don't want to put food and beverages in there multiple times.
Right.
So what we're doing here is we're seeing if we're creating a new variable later that we're going to do that down here in the assignment where we're adding the value. Well, if it's already in there, we want to skip it. So you make sure it doesn't contain. There's no not contains. So if you need to do that, you use custom logic and you use not. That's your little hack for trying to come up with the not contains.
Awesome.
So so that keeps you from duplicating. So if it's not in there, don't worry about it. Move on to the next one. Check it. Move on to the next one. If it is in there, come this way, do an assignment, and you're just assigning to this string variable. Because all a multi-select pick list is essentially when you're going to go update one is a semicolon delimited string. So you got the string variable, and you're going to add the current item, but you're adding, if you can see here, it's the MSP value. So you matched it on the label, but because you have that record, you can now take its value field, and now you added it. So you've just added the value, and then you added a semicolon, and then you're ready to come back and check the rest. When you're done and you've got the 3 matches that you had, you can take here and you can just update your super categories. Now, I'm updating to this formula. All this formula is doing is removing that last colon. There's other ways to do this. You could write a more complex formula that only adds it if there wasn't one already there. I think this is easier. I just removed the colon at the end. So a quick look at that formula. It's that field. It's your new MSP values variable that we've been building. You're just pulling off that formula, and you're putting it in the update that triggered it. And now this is a before save flow, so this happens like that. It's just
it's updating the existing record. Wow.
Now,
let me ask you,
go ahead.
Brian, do you mind if I ask a quick question here?
Please ask questions.
Yeah. So in this particular case, so when you started describing this, I was kind of thinking about it from a different way. You're getting all the records from the custom metadata type and looping through them and checking the string. Mm-hmm. So if Angie had, let's just say, 200 possible values in that metadata type, and the data that comes in only has one value in there, we're still going to loop through all 200 of them.
You are.
And then, okay. Any concerns with, I guess, the number of elements that are hit in the flow? Like, what's the limit there that we would be concerned with here? Anything?
So there's no longer a limit on number of elements in a flow. There was a 2,000 elements limit, and that went away in 50 something. API 50 something. So there was a 2,000 elements limit, and now the only limit you're going to run into is time, and that's going to be the 10 seconds of processing, basically.
Yeah, but when we're talking just 200 records that we're checking, that's like instantaneous almost.
You could do thousands of records, and you're not going to hit that.
All right, real quick, Sandy, I saw you had a hand up. Question on this or a question on something else?
Something else, but it's nothing like majorly important. So if we're in the middle of something,
no, that's fine. Real quick, I did see also a question from Ken. He was asking about how can this be before save because I have an update records. I think that's one thing that it's a confusion that people have where you think that if it's in a before, you use the assignment element, and if it's in the after, you use the update. And I think Stephen Trumbull might have pointed this out a while back as a best practice. Before and after, you could use that update records, and it's nice because if you ever have to switch between the contexts, you never have to
Mhm.
like switch them back and forth. You just use update, and it works in both places. Is that fair to say, Brian?
That is fair to say. I was originally, because when I first learned, when they first introduced these flows, they just told you to use the assignment, and then this doesn't actually cost you a second um, DML action. It's going to go in that same DML action. So you can do it either with just an assignment and never do the update action, or do the update. And I used to be in the assignment camp, but I think Steven's the one who swayed me to
Yeah.
why not? That way, if you do convert it to an after save because you find out that you're going to do more stuff, you don't have to
Uh,
remember to make an update. It's already there.
yeah, yeah. And Ken, just to be very clear there, the update records that he has there, if it's in the before context, it does not cause another DML. That's what he's mentioning there. It still executes in the before context, all within that same before context transaction. It's not causing a second one. It's almost as if you had just put an assignment element there. The only benefit of doing it this way is if you do switch to after, it'll still work. You don't have to redo any kind of work switching all your assignment elements
Yep.
to updates. So this adds no additional overhead. It's just a convenience thing.
Yes, it's documented in the when you look up how before save flows work. I mean, I don't point you to the exact, but yes. And this is
Okay.
so this goes through. Let's see. The only one other thing I'd want to cover here, I guess, would be I had one other formula. This was the cleaning. You had those ampersands, and they were going to throw stuff off. So just a simple substitute where we substitute the markup for a regular and then you could do another thing here, and this is totally up to you for your system. I just wanted to point this out to you. If you did implement a solution like this one in this update, if you wanted to clean up that field, um, your super categories field, and get rid of the ampersands in the text field that the integration brings in, you could just update your super categories field here if you chose to, um, your product categories field with that same formula that cleaned out the ampersands, and then it would make it more readable. That's up to you.
The only reason why I might advise against that, sometimes it's nice to have the exact thing that came from the integration preserved, because there's always mistakes that can happen. And if you accidentally change that and now you lose some of the data, stuff like that, I can see
I
that being an
totally
issue.
agree. I totally
Yeah.
agree. And that's why it wasn't actually in there, but it is an extra option you could do. And that was one method. Why I say I had, you said there were the three methods was I tested it in a screen flow first before putting it in an update flow. And I did a version where it just took straight, if say all your MSP values did match, you didn't have funkiness. I was able to do it in a flow without custom metadata type, and I have a way to do that. And then I have another text way. I don't know if we want to look at other questions. And then Angie, if you want to see the weird text way I did, we can do that here or in a separate huddle or something.
All right. Real quick, Greg, is your question related to this, or is this an unrelated question?
It's somewhat related.
Yeah, if it's related to this, let's go. If not, we'll come back to it if that's okay.
Yeah. When you do a get records, does that count against your SOQL query limits if in case you're running triggers and things like that?
Yeah, a get records is a SOQL query. So you get 101 in your transaction.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Ryan, I was going to ask you the original one, you get all your metadata types and then you loop through them. Just generally speaking, what was the approach for the other two ways that you went?
It was to, since you know your data, it was to go ahead and take your data and build it out in a I might even have a work product, but to build it out in text and then put it into a constant in a string. And then I use a subflow I built. There's also tools on unofficial SF, or you just do it right in here through a loop. I just found it easier to use this subflow, and then I just convert that string into a collection.
Gotcha. Okay.
and then after that, the process is the same. You're doing the looping through. It's just that if it was the direct way where it was exact values, it's super easy. You don't need two separate fields. And if you're doing it where the way that Angie's situation is, your string would have to have a delimiter, and it would have to have a delimiter within to have two sides to the string. The first side, like what I did was first side, colon, second side, delimit it with a semicolon. Next value, first side, colon, second side, delimit it with the semicolon. And then when you come through here, you're checking a formula that just grabs the first side.
Yeah.
And then this is checking the other side. So it's the same thing, but instead of using the fields in the thing, you're using the sides. There's just a little extra work is that you have to have that constant that you work with or some other thing where because you got to get the collection to work with. My method for getting the collection to work with is to have one constant that I update over here.
Gotcha.
And then.
Okay, I see what you're talking about.
And then this was my quasi map. So same thing.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Go back to the custom metadata type. One of the things from Apex, one of the benefits of using some of these kind of special objects is that it doesn't count towards your query limits. In other words, like I can get custom settings, for example, and it won't count towards my number of SOQL statements in my code. When you do a get on a custom metadata type, or let me maybe a better way to ask this is, and you get custom metadata types without having to use a get records. Like, is there a way to reference them as part
Probably,
of
because I know you can directly reference a specific custom metadata type and say a validation rule, or even in a flow. But since I was trying to get the collection and build a collection to loop through, I don't see a way to do that without having done the get.
Yeah, I don't think the get records actually uses a SOQL query though, Bill. Like,
it does. You said you do or you don't, Stephen? I didn't.
Like, I don't think it counts towards the limit though.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So it might not because it's custom metadata type. So while I said it did earlier, in general, a get records is a SOQL, but it might not. I'd have to look that up. And Stephen, unless you're already on it and can post.
Yeah, the reason why I asked that question, because when you initially described the custom metadata type, I was actually thinking you were going to loop through, like you have your string that's got all your delimited values in it. And if you just chop off the first value, taking that, like updating the original, you chop off the first one. So you have your current record you're working with, and then you have the string that represents everything else. You look up that in the custom metadata type. If you find it, then, log it. Then you chop off the next value, look that up in the metadata type. That's where I was thinking you're going to looping, where you're just constantly like chopping off your field from the integration into smaller and smaller pieces and looking them up. But that lookup piece, that's the part that I wasn't sure if you could do that within a flow.
No, you could directly reference even without doing a lookup in a flow. It's tricky. You have to have the exact. Well, in fact, I think that they've added it finally. It wasn't originally in the. It wasn't originally available here, but I feel like. Let's see, where's the variable? Amount's probably a bad one.
You like a text one or something?
Yeah. Fine. I feel like now you can actually come down here and see, see custom metadata, and then I could, but see, I can't.
Yeah, I don't know how to like get
it still doesn't take you all
need.
the way down. So what you would need to do is you would need to actually put the dot whatever. You could stick it into a formula, and it can be done, but it's not documented, and it is a little more clunky. I looked at different ways. I looked at parsing and chopping and cutting down and going through as one way to loop, but this seemed easier.
Yeah,
this she has a known quantity of how many things, how many categories that she has. And I didn't have all the data, but I gathered what I could out of her post. So there's a way to do it with no custom metadata type. If you are willing to build the text string to then and then convert that text string into a collection, a text collection,
Then there's a
which,
maintenance issue that comes into that, adding
yeah,
values,
and there's a maintenance issue both ways, right? Because you still got to maintain the custom metadata type, which still takes a sysadmin, but probably easier. I prefer the custom metadata, but
yeah.
I did the last one just for funsies. But
Now, last question for me, and then we'll open it up to other questions as well. The solution you mentioned in the very beginning, which I thought was a great idea, doing this, but instead of actually putting it into a string that you're going to use to update a multi-select pick list, you mentioned about creating like another object, a related object. So when you parse this, instead of having that multi-select pick list populated, you would just have a related list under the opportunity with those values selected. Any major thoughts on that, or any kind of gotchas that folks would want to be aware of if you went that way?
So you're going to have to look to see, are you, is whatever version you're on, what are your limits for the number of custom objects and where's it being used and who's using it? I know some of the lower versions, and if you're out on experienced site users, you have limits to like 10 custom objects, things like that. So those are things you're going to want to look at. And this use case may not be as deep, but if you wanted to track multiple things on there, that's where that other object's good, because you have extra fields you can play with now. So you could say create an object, and then you could have super category and regular category be in there. And then you could still build an automation like this, that you'd still build a flow that would then take and create those. Now, it wouldn't be of a for save flow anymore. It would be an after save flow that creates those records and links them up. And in fact, what you'd probably do is I would recommend two objects. One object that's all my categories, super categories, whatever, however I want to do that. And then the flow would just it would look at that text field, and then it would build a the junction objects that would hang off of your main record, your opportunity in this case. And then you have a nice related list on your opportunity, and then you can report on that.
Nice.
So, and that's one of the main, and I was, there's a good article I'll post with multi-select options. I'll post it in a minute. There's a pretty good article with some options to do instead of a multi-select pick list, and it describes that one at the bottom. And I've used that for other builds in the past where we knew, and I first saw it in if you have like Lightning Scheduler and some of these other things, that's what they're doing in the background with your, they have your list of resources essentially would be that other object, and then a junction that connects the resources to the type of work or the appointment or whatever else.
Awesome. This is pretty slick. I appreciate putting it together. Any other questions on this before we move on?
I have lots, but I'll talk to Ryan directly.
Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts on this one before we go back to our raised hands? All right. Ryan, this is awesome. I appreciate you putting this together.
I love playing with flow.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Sandy, you have your hand up. What do you got?
Right. I finally had the
sharing, by the way.
Finally had the chance to play with the DLRS. Enough so that like just the one little thing that I did, it worked and was very nice. And it was the same thing that we had used Rollup Helper for, but since DLRS is kind of that open source and free.
Yep.
With more than 3 things.
Yeah.
However, I now am supposed to kind of demo it during one of our internal meetings, and I'm not really sure what kind of example to do because like that one thing is kind of boring for a demo. And then all of our other things that could have possibly used it at one point, we have so many ways that we done roundabout related that there's no way I could undo any of that in order to kind of use that as an example. So just like a generic example, if anybody has any ideas, would be nice.
Yeah. So just to kind of take a step back. So for those that might not be aware, the issue, so DLRS is basically the declarative roll up lookup summary thing. I forget what the hell it's called, right? But anyway, it gets you around the fact that in Salesforce, when you want to create a roll up summary field, the only way you can do that is if you have a master detail relationship. And the fact of the matter is, there's many scenarios where you just can't use a master detail, but you still need to be able to get these roll ups. You want to get an aggregate on the parent side, aggregating all the child records underneath that. So
And you can't use a formula as a criteria portion. So that was actually what I wanted to, specifically what I was trying to do. I have a checkbox where it's set by a formula. Like if services are this month, I only want those ones rolled up.
Yeah.
I can't use that.
Date ones, the date criteria for roll-up summaries, that's another big one as well, that it limits you. So yeah, roll-up summary fields, if you can use them, great. If not, the two main options, or I'll throw three in there. Three main options that you have to get those aggregates done, that I've seen. One that doesn't require you to do anything else and you can use it out of the box would be flow, right? You can come up with some kind of logic that whenever you create a record, it queries all the other records, loops through them, does the math or whatever you got to do, and then it updates a record on the parent. That's a way.
Actually what I'm fixing because it did not do it correctly. Because basically, if something got changed in the opposite direction, it doesn't rerun that specific thing to reset those numbers.
Yeah.
People never build the on delete flow. Then like you need to double up everything when you do it that way.
So from both directions, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's a way. But then the other two options that are out there, one is roll up helper. It's a freemium, I guess it would be called, where you can do these roll ups, but you only get 3 of them before you have to pay for it. And then DLRS is the other one, and that's the one that I would recommend as well, because you can do as many roll ups as you want, and the product is supported by it. They say it's open source, but really there's a community, a very active community that is building enhancements. They got volunteers to update documentation. They got like the whole thing. It's like if you want to join and be a part of the program, anybody can go on there, sign up, and you can volunteer to do whatever your skill is. You can volunteer towards the program. But anyway, to get back to your question, you're just trying to say, we have DLRS now. Let me show you a cool thing that we can do with this thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so
also, and I guess also how to possibly integrate it to any clients if they need something similar, that we can do this instead. If that it's an option, that it's a thing that we can use instead of roll-up helper, or trying to create some roundabout master detail relationships.
Right. Well, I saw Angie had a hand up. So Angie, what was the use case that you were thinking of?
So for one of my clients, they wanted to count some things on lead records, and you can't have any roll-up summaries on lead records because it can't be a master detail. So I created a custom object and related it to the lead record, and then used the DLRS to count the records with filter criteria that I specified in the DLRS, and then displayed that as formula fields on the lead record. So Sandy, I just like, if you can come up with anything that you wanted to count, like I don't know, do you use leads?
Yeah, I think we do. I mean, I personally don't, but I believe that we do have them in our org that we use.
Yeah, so if you wanted something for like a demo, I mean, you could do something simple like a custom object of books read, and then put books in there and maybe give it a type field of autobiography or fiction, science fiction, and then have a roll-up field to count the number of autobiography, number of science fiction, number of fiction. Yeah, I'm throwing things out there, but that would be a super simple demo that would resonate with people, and it would be a way to use that.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good one. One of the ones that we've used in the past, we have our think about accounts and opportunities. On the account object, my sales team wants to be able to just look at an account and figure out what was the total revenue from that account in the last quarter. Now the quarter changes every day, right? Or it can, right? Depending on where the cutover is. So one of the nice things about DLRS, for those that aren't familiar, there's a couple of different ways for you to execute these rollups that it's doing. One is a triggered based thing. So you change a record, that's on the detail side, so it recalculates the rollup and puts it up to the master. That's one way, but then there's also scheduled versions of this where you can have it run on a nightly basis. You can even have it run triggered by Flow or Process Builder. It's what it was originally designed for, but a lot of different ways to kick it off. So in the case of date-based rollups, you can just have that thing run every night or every week, where it just recalculates the total revenue for an account. So that's a way or another thing you can do.
I
Any other
do.
ideas? Yeah, go ahead, Sandy.
I was gonna say
Yeah,
one of the things that I did notice with like building it is that it's like one of the things I didn't like about Roll-Up Helper is it wasn't very intuitive when you're trying to build it, like exactly what you're trying to do. Um, and I find that the DLRS isn't really that intuitive either, just from visually trying to be it directly in Salesforce, but their how-to guide is really good. Like
Yeah.
like all the step-by-step stuff on what each thing means, what you should do, and when you should do the order, like that part is awesome. But like the actual just if you were just trying to do it on your own, it's definitely not intuitive without that guide.
Yeah. Forrest, you had a comment
Yeah,
as
could I
well.
make a suggestion on the product support side? Before, we work with this company, my company, where we do field tracking services, but really customized with our customers. And initially, before they used DLRSs, but they went overboard on the DLRSs, and that caused a lot of exceptions. Yeah, so my suggestion would just take it like one step at a time, maybe create two or three, especially with customers with a lot of customizations. Yeah, and we spent like about I think we spent like 2 or 3 months going back to the customers and deactivating the DLRSs and getting them to a point where they can actually use their org without
Mm.
running into a lot of exceptions. And we noticed on several occasions when you do the batch job with the DLRSs, sometimes it didn't update, you
Hmm.
know. So we had
I've
to run it
I
like
have actually
several
noticed the
other
same thing
times.
with Roll-Up Helper though too.
Really.
Well,
Yeah,
so
so if you have a
I've
lot
seen
of
this.
yeah,
Good.
sorry.
Mhm.
No, after you, Sandy, please.
To say, if you have a lot of records and you're trying to like recalculate everything,
Yeah.
like with Roll-Up Helper, there was one time that we were trying to recalculate something because we made an adjustment, and the time frame that it said it was going to take was over 24 hours.
Yeah, there are some Apex code in there where if you hit certain values or certain criteria, it will trigger it, the Apex code. Then it will also trigger the DLSs, and it became like a loop. And
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, you definitely need to be careful with that. And the other thing I was going to
yeah,
say, and then if you don't mind, we're going to jump over because Kevin's had his hand up for a while.
sure.
The other thing
And
that I've noticed too is that if your triggering mechanism is, for example, a record triggered flow that's running in the asynchronous context, asynchronous things invoking other asynchronous things could be a challenge on the Salesforce platform. So there's a case where it won't fire because the starting thing was asynchronous. So that's something else to consider. But I think
Mm,
for 87.3% of the use cases that are just standard. We have a parent object, we have a bunch of children, and we need to roll the stuff up without a lot of other customization or complexity in the org. DLRS, I think, is definitely the way to go these days.
Mhm.
yeah,
Um, and of course, anybody that calls it Dolores, you immediately have to mock them and don't let them get away with it. It's DLRS. All right. That's my take. Um,
yeah. I
okay.
just wanted to
Yeah.
provide that feedback because it was a nightmare for our company when we
Yeah.
had to go back and fix it. So thanks.
But I assume that would be true of like if you use Roll-Up Helper too, you would probably run into
Yeah,
that because they don't seem that different.
Or
yeah,
engineering
exactly.
flows for all the roll ups you're trying
Yep,
to do or anything
Right.
else. Yeah.
Exactly.
yep. Hmm.
Um, all right. Let's see. Kevin, you have
Hey,
a question.
yes, thank you. Um, so I'm Salesforce admin certified, and I'm currently in the boot camp for Java. And at the end of the day, I would love to be a Salesforce developer. Is the is the certifications the way to go? Of course, I'm building stuff out. I'm doing Visual Code. I'm doing the Salesforce EX. I'm building up my portfolio. But is that where should I put my focus on? Should it be certification and portfolio?
Um, I mean, I'll take a stab at this so we can open up to the group.
Yeah.
I think that, in any kind of technology that you're learning for the first time, I think there's something nice about the certifications, just in the fact that they kind of give you an outline of all the things that you probably should know, right? So it kind of gives you a list of, I should look at all these different things. Now, I guess the biggest question for me is if you're coming in to be a Salesforce developer, are you already coming in with experience developing on a different platform or a different language, or is this your first language altogether?
I'm in a Java boot camp, so we're
Oh,
working with it now.
okay. Okay, gotcha. Um, you did say that. Yeah, I think the certifications are nice to work towards because you can kind of use that outline, to learn kind of things in a in an order, or just at least get an idea of everything you need to know. That would be my take. I think it's not a bad idea to use that syllabus or whatever they call it to kind of go through it. But practical examples, taking things that if you are experienced on the platform and you've built things with flows and the other kind of declarative automation, taking those as a starting point and saying, okay, if I didn't have flow, how would I implement this with Apex? How would I build a trigger for this? Or how would I build a class or something for this? That could be a way to go, because then you have a kind of an apples to apples thing that you can compare. Here's what I already know declaratively. Let's see if we can do that programmatically, and then, go from there. But let me just shut up. Anybody else have any other thoughts on this? I would love to do a poll to see how many people on the call are developers versus declarative programmers. Well, I was going to say declarative programmers versus like admins. Be interested in the mix.
I totally want to learn all that stuff.
Yeah.
Every so often I try to get like the super detailed details, and I'm like, nope, still don't know what I'm supposed to
do. Yeah. So Kevin, I don't know if we have a great answer for you, but I would say that if I was learning from scratch, I would probably keep the certification on one hand, and I would, start going through that and, doing practical examples for, everything that you're learning through the Trailhead modules. That would probably be the way I would tackle it.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And if you need any help with anything, development is kind of my thing. So I'm happy to help if you want to hit me up in the Slack workspace. And for those that I didn't have the presentation today, so I'll post this into the chat right now. But if you're not a member of our Slack workspace, you definitely want to be a member, and then you can chat with people that were on the call, follow up questions, all that good stuff. So I will throw that there right now. Yeah, so it looks like we have about 2 minutes left. I don't know how, Ken, I see you have a hand up. We'll go to your question, but we do have 2 minutes, and I have a hard stop, and the meeting will end when I drop. So what do you got, if we can help you? You're on mute.
Sorry, this is for me, Ken.
Yes, Ken. Good.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So real quick, I was just wondering if anyone else knows. Apparently, and this is shocking to me, you can call inactive flows from a parent flow. Now, it used to be, and I don't know when this changed. I'm curious if anybody knows. You couldn't even, if you were building a flow and you were trying to call a subflow like a auto launch or a screen flow, it wouldn't even show up until you activated it. At some point, they changed that. And that had to be in the last year or two, because you definitely could not used to do that. And now you can also, there's a quote deployed solution, which is a joke, known issue, where it runs the inactive version. Like if you have a newer version that's actually inactive and the active version is an older version, it runs the newer inactive version. And they claim they fixed that. They claim they fixed that. I haven't verified it, but that was a known issue. They claim they patched, I think, in summer 24. But I was shocked to find that you can both from Apex call a parent flow and from regular old flow call a parent flow and run a child flow that isn't even active. Does anyone know if it's always been like that? Was that a recent change?
So I see in the chat, I think Stephen posted this. My understanding was that if you're trying to call a child flow, you wouldn't be able to select an inactive flow. However, if the parent and child were active and you save them and then went in and deactivated the child flow, it wouldn't remove it. It would still be there and it would still be referenced in the parent.
It used to be like that. But if you try it now, you can literally create a flow, like say an auto launch flow, put a, input variable, check input, don't even activate it. Just create it, never even activate it, create a new flow and send output to it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I will definitely try this one out. Unfortunately, it is 1 o'clock. I do have a hard stop. Again, if you want to continue, we can continue this conversation in our Slack channel on the Slack workspace. Everybody, especially Ryan, thank you very much for all the work that you put into your presentation today. I appreciate it. Hope everybody has a great weekend, and we'll catch up next week. Thanks all.